Salute. All right, looks like we're starting the MAHA Media Hub is being simulcast to a LinkedIn profile near you. Susan, how are you?
I'm not too bad. I made it here. I got myself set up. Got my seltzer with some fancy juices in it. I'm all good. How about you, Liam?
Yeah, I've gotten a little tasty beverage.
Yeah, a little cafe.
So, yeah.
Olay?
So, I'm... go ahead. No, tea.
Oh, tea.
Turmeric
Okay.
ginger tea.
I was going to say white, green, black. What are we drinking?
A light brown.
Nice. So, Liam,
Yes.
mushrooms, non-psychedelic.
Yes.
My husband Michael and I went to, so I think I mentioned Kennett Square, Pennsylvania, which is about 25 minutes south of us, is the mushroom capital of the world. And we went to a mushroom farm last weekend. So interesting.
Oops, hold on. Let me get you in there. Okay, continue. Yes. What mushroom farm last weekend? Sounds interesting.
It is called Phillips Mushroom Farms. It is family owned, 4th generation. Really nice people. Super knowledgeable lady named Tina, who does a lecture of an hour once a month. So we listen to her lecture. She has been mushrooming since the early 70s and has rubbed elbows with Paul Stamets. You know him, the psychedelic mushroom guru guy, since the early 70s.
Yes.
So anyway, listen to that. We had come home with loads of mushrooms the previous weekend. So she was telling us things like apparently there's way more potassium in some of the varieties of mushrooms than there are in bananas and other fruits and vegetables that you think of as being high potassium. And she also showed us a chart or graph of cultures around the world. And the higher the intake of mushrooms on a daily basis and the variety of mushrooms, the lower the incidence of cancer, Parkinson's, Alzheimer's, because they have all these fun compounds in them that, you know, are anti-carcinogenic and pro things that you want. It was super interesting.
Well, people say that I'm kind of like a mushroom. You know why?
Yeah, I want to know why.
Because I'm a fun guy.
Yeah, Liam. Okay. All right. So you are a fun guy.
Sorry about that.
Have you watched that very fun the fungi movie? I think it's called The Magical World of Fungi or something on Netflix. If you haven't, Liam, you must. And if there's anybody on here with us and you haven't, you must. It is absolutely amazing. Apparently, those little guys, they have roots underground that are alive, talking to one another, supporting all manner of life, trees, other vegetation. It is next level.
There's a theory that that as humanity grew, that mushrooms were what helped consciousness grow, helped us turn from primates into human beings.
I can believe it. I know that, what is his name? Food writer guy, Michael Pollan. He's big on food, but he's also big on psychedelics. And he has said that the only countries in the entire world that don't have the use of something that is mind-altering, whether it is caffeine, alcohol, mushrooms, ayahuasca, are cultures that don't have anything natively growing. So apparently it's just an innate human desire or draw to alter the consciousness in some way.
Yes. And we've got a comment. Nice. Leanne in the house. Let's give a warm set of applause.
That calls for putting on of one's crown.
Oh, yeah. All right. I got my
Leanne, thank you so much for coming. We've missed you. What does she say, Leanne?
So, yeah.
Hello, troops. How are you?
She says, how are we both doing? Hello, troops. How are we doing? We're doing great.
And Leanne,
we are ready for the broadcast. And If anybody would like to comment, we're going to kind of jump in and out while Tony Lyons is talking. We will be talking, taking comments and doing our color commentary. And as the speakers roll in, we will let the speakers speak, and we'll stop talking. Yes, you've got such a lovely. You look so much better in your crown than I do. Mine's a dollar store crown. Yours just looks so much.
Liam, I don't know what you're talking about. Your crown is fabulous. Now, hold on. You added the jewels, and then we talked about a little red border. Did the red border happen yet?
Yeah, no, the red border.
The border
didn't make
is
it.
there.
No.
Okay, Liam, I think you could. I mean, I'm going to defer to Leanne as president of our fan club as to whether.
And she says excellent. She says excellent.
Okay, see, and Leanne, do you have any suggestions for Liam to up his game crown-wise, or do you think, like I do, that he's good?
I try. You know,
you're doing great, Liam.
That's all we can do.
Any crown is a good crown, the way I look at it.
Any crown is a good crown. And
right,
you know, they say no kings. Well, we've got a king of LinkedIn Live and the queen of Barefoot Health Advocacy.
There you have
Barefoot Health Advocacy. Okay, so here we go. I'm going to bring the sound down because we're going to get hit with a strike, and I put my own sound in there. MAHA Media Hub coming at you live, simulcasting from Zoom to LinkedIn. Okay, let's see what they have to say.
Welcome to the MAHA Media Hub. I'm Tony Lyons, president of MAHA Action. Today we're talking about some big wins for the MAHA movement, thanks to Secretary Kennedy pushing for the kind of common sense reforms that Americans have been asking for. And, you know, thanks to all of you for your help in getting these things done. Last week, at Secretary Kennedy's urging, the FDA reversed a short-sighted Biden-era policy that had cut off access to essential peptides. MAHA has been loud about these problems from the start. They had less to do with science and more to do with Big Pharma protecting its turf. By overturning the 2023 Category 2 listing, the FDA has finally ended the de facto ban on compounding pharmacies making substances like BPC 157 and TB 500. That's a huge win for health freedom and proof of what happens when we put people and small businesses ahead of big government and big pharma. For a lot of Americans, compounding pharmacies are where you actually get effective treatments at a fair price from pharmacists who know you and know what they're doing. And let's be honest, the previous administration's war on peptides was really part of a bigger war on compounding pharmacies and on medical freedom and informed consent. So at the same time that they immediately pulled off 12 popular peptides from the Category 2 ban list, the FDA is now fast-tracking a meeting of the Pharmacy Compounding Advisory Committee. That's a critical step towards getting a much bigger list of peptides back on the market where they can actually help people who need them. I know we've got a lot of peptide folks on this call, but anyone just tuning in, let me say a word about what peptides actually are. Peptides are short chains of amino acids. They work like messengers, telling your body to repair tissue, calm down inflammation, balance hormones, and get your metabolism working right again. After decades of processed food, environmental toxins, and drugs that just mask symptoms, that's what a lot of people in this country need. Unlike the patented drugs that keep you hooked for life, peptides work with your own body. They help you recover from injuries, give you more energy, hold on to muscle, and fight the chronic inflammation behind so much of our obesity and autoimmune disease. They give regular people a way to take charge of their health without waiting on a broken system for permission. The other thing that's exciting about peptides is who gets access to them. Tools that used to be reserved for elite athletes and wealthy people are now available to absolutely anybody. BPC 157 for gut and tendon repair, CJC and ipamorelin for growth hormone. These don't replace good food, sleep, or exercise, but they work alongside them by expanding access through responsible compounding. We're giving millions of people a safer, more affordable way to feel like themselves once again. The second big win came during a Saturday meeting in the Oval Office. The president, Secretary Kennedy, and Marty McCary and Joe Rogan sat down with veterans to mark the signing of an executive order that's going to change how we treat mental illness in this country. With one signature, we went from ignoring psychedelics to embracing what they can do. ARPA-H has committed $50 million to matching state-level investments in psychedelic research. And people with severe mental illness now have the right to try psychedelic therapies that were off the table for far too long. Millions of Americans, including a lot of veterans, finally have options they've been waiting years for. When MAHA speaks up, whether that's people on this call or someone with a microphone the size of Joe Rogan's, Secretary Kennedy and President Trump listen. That's why peptides and psychedelics, treatments the establishment used to laugh at, are now front and center in the fight against chronic disease and our mental health crisis. A third win came from all your hard work. The House Rules Committee wanted to advance a bill, H.R. 2289, which would essentially allow telecom companies to place a cell tower outside your window with no local input. I sent a letter to Speaker Johnson urging him to oppose this horrible bill. MAHA Action, along with our friends at Children's Health Defense, mobilized our backers all around the country to make calls and send messages to the committee, and then they backed down. Your work made them back down. Your voices were heard, and your voices made the difference. Today, we also want to talk about another MAHA win that we hope to effectuate, and this time at the Supreme Court. The People versus Poison rally is happening on Monday, April 27th at 9 a.m., right outside the U.S. Supreme Court. And a lot of us will be there to send a message to the justices and to the whole country. Thousands of farmers, parents, activists are going to demand an end to the unchecked use of toxic chemicals in our food as the court hears the Monsanto versus Journell case. Bare Monsanto lobbyists are spinning hard, but the case is simple. Can a state court jury hold Monsanto liable for putting a cancer warning on Roundup, even though the EPA didn't require one? If Monsanto wins, toxic chemicals get a nationwide liability shield for failure to warn. If Monsanto loses, victims keep the right to seek justice. That's it. Can we, the people, hold companies accountable for poisoning our food, or do they get a free pass? We just won on peptides, and I believe we can win this one too, on glyphosate, and on everything like it. So let's get into it. Today we're joined by U.S. Senator for Kentucky, Rand Paul, Deputy Commissioner for Human Foods at FDA, Kyle Diamantis, food activist and author known as the Food Babe, Bonnie Hari, public health advocate and founder of Glyphosate Girl, Kelly Ryerson, healthcare attorney and pharmacy regulations expert, Lee Rosebush, functional medicine practitioner and author, Dr. Daniel Pompa, neuroscientist and co-author of Cancer is a Parasite, William Supple Jr., the knowledge doc, Dr. Eric Berg, and human biologist and biohacker, Gary Brecka. First up, we'll hear from the founder of Ways to Well, owner of Revive RX Pharmacy, investor in psychedelic research, and health optimization advocate, Brigham Bueller. He's a healthcare entrepreneur transforming American broken system. He fights for a healthcare model that prioritizes patients over profits through preventative care, transparency, and innovation. Welcome, Brigham. Great to see you again.
Tony, thank you for the introduction and the enthusiasm. This was a monumental week. I can tell you this is something that I have been fighting for for the last few years, and I just cannot thank Secretary Kennedy and everyone on this group on the call who have fought for this so diligently. This was not an easy fight. We were up against a monumental battle with Big Pharma and their lobbying power. And for this to get to the finish line like it did is unbelievable. As somebody who owns a telemedicine company and a pharmacy that employs over 600 hardworking Americans right here on American soil, one of the things that I've tried to articulate to the FDA, there's so many traps that have been set by Big Pharma. I definitely want to talk about the psychedelics and the win there, but with the peptide win, the testosterone win, the announcement from Admiral Christine and Marty on the changes with testosterone, all of these things are going to make medications more accessible, more affordable, and help drive preventative predictive medicine. One of the things that I've talked about in depth is this system is not working. It isn't a knock on the FDA or its ability to regulate. It is the system that the FDA inherited. And that system is a whack-a-mole system that allows major pharmaceutical conglomerates to capitalize on the revolving door that has historically been the FDA. And I think that's what we saw with the original peptide announcement under the Biden administration. It was very unfortunate, but a lot of those peptides were banned, and it didn't take away accessibility. What it took away was safe accessibility. It forced the average American to go to gray and black market solutions. In fact, 4 out of 5 peptides being filled in America right now are being filled via gray and black market internet sources, meaning there is no checks and balances. There is no clinician in the chain of custody. There's nobody providing medical oversight. Even the large language models like ChatGPT have taken away patients' ability to ask questions on how to reconstitute or mix a medication. I mean, we were literally living in the Wild West. So for the naysayers who have said this is, the Wild West now, we've been living in the Wild West. This is where patients didn't have a clinician anywhere in the chain of command. Now clinicians and patients have sovereignty and autonomy over their health again to allow a clinician to make the decision alongside a patient on what treatment modality may be best for them. And Tony, you did such an eloquent job of breaking down peptides. I don't want to get too in the weeds on the science or anything behind that. But to me, the major overarching theme of this debate is, do we believe in medical freedom and medical right to choose? Are these compounds safe? And we know, and I'm sure Gary and several of the other folks who have practiced medicine or own into these sectors could tell you for almost a decade, we were safely using many of the compounds that got banned under Biden's administration. And to see those compounds come back is just unbelievable for patients and for accessibility for the average American. It also, what a lot of people don't understand is most of the items on a hospital crash cart, most of the items used in hospital systems are made by compounding pharmacies. And those products have zero profit margin to minimal profit margin. And when you're attempting to run a compounding pharmacy and employ all these hardworking Americans, it's very difficult to run and scale those pharmacies without products like peptides. And so for these products to be put back, rightfully so, into the hands of the consumer and to the patient where they can decide, if what we were doing was working historically, the system is not built or equipped to practice predictive proactive medicine. In the insurance model, it is literally monetizing chronic disease. I mean, that is just the facts. All of the pharmacy benefit managers that decide what medications get covered have been captured by the big 5 insurance companies. United, Cigna, Aetna, Blue Cross Blue Shield, they all own the PBMs, and the PBMs decide what drugs get put on formulary. And so this is a much more complicated, nuanced topic than I think the average person understands. And if the FDA would have gone the other way, patients would have been forced to turn to places like China and India to get these life-changing treatments and these treatment modalities. A real-world example I can give you on the psychedelic topic, to touch on what Tony said, the announcement around Ibogaine from the White House this past Saturday was monumental. The studies, the data, this is not bro science. These are Stanford professors, Stanford educated individuals that have run most of these studies, and the data is unbelievably compelling. I had should say misfortune at a young age of coming right out of college and being employed by a well-known pharmaceutical company called Eli Lilly, where I was told we were going to solve depression. Depression was a thing of the past. Prozac was going to solve depression. 25 years later, have we solved depression? Deaths of despair at an all-time high. Anxiety at an all-time high. Prescription drug sales of SSRIs at an all-time high. But what does the retrospective data show us? 25 years later, the retrospective data across all SSRIs, this isn't me saying this is the data saying this, does not differentiate from placebo. So what have we spent billions and billions and hundreds of billions of dollars on trying to help Americans with this chronic debilitating depression and anxiety and PTSD with no real benefit? Meanwhile, pharma rode it all the way to the bank. And treatments like Ibogaine and psychedelics are a tool in the tool belt that will hopefully allow clinicians to provide their patients and these military veterans with alternatives, efficacious, safe alternatives when administered appropriately and under the proper clinical supervision. And I just think between peptides and the psychedelic movement that this new administration has helped create, the future is unbelievably bright. And we can go to practicing, get away from the sick care model, where through telemedicine platforms and the opportunity to utilize modalities like hormone optimization for men and women, we can truly drive health span. We know that our 40s is the decade of decline. Men on average age 12 years biologically between 40 and 50, and women age 17 years biologically between 40 and 50. It is a massive decline in our physiological state during that decade. And we now have tools and options in the tool belt that allow clinicians to get proactive, predictive, and preventative. And I'm just unbelievably thankful and appreciative for everything that Secretary Kennedy and this administration has done to pave the way for accessibility for all Americans. And that's it. Thank you so much, everyone, for your time.
All right, if you're watching, now's your time to comment. We will attend to the comments as the speakers are handed up. Susan, what do you have to say? I think this is right up your...
It is right up my alley because I
alley.
happen to take body protection compound 157 and have found it very helpful. I have an autoimmune disease that attacks my connective tissue, and it is one of the things, certainly not the only thing, that really moved the needle in terms of me feeling better, having reduced joint pain, and just feeling like a human being again. One of the things that strikes me is it sounds like the Great War has been over the question of whether or not peptides are safe. To me, that is just palpably ludicrous and absurd, not because I'm going to claim peptides are safe, although I believe they are, but because there are so many products on our market already that we know are unsafe, that we know have an adverse impact on blood pressure or liver function or, kidney function, you name it. So it's really interesting to me that that particular area, the body protection compound, all the peptides, was targeted when so many other products are already floating around that say right on the package liver or label can cause death or migraines or you name it.
Okay, let's see what Lee Rosebush has to say.
Still on my pharmacy license today, in addition to being a lawyer and an MBA and a Master's of Finance, which I went to school way too long. But as somebody who has spent the last 5 years having this fight for peptides, it really means a lot to see what MAHA has done and what this administration has done to stand up for patients' rights. One of the big things, as Brigham just mentioned, is we as OFA and as the American Academy of Peptide Medicine do, is to try to fight to ensure patients and providers have access to the medications they need. And that is exactly what this administration did, was they put forward a policy to ensure that the patients and providers now have access to these medications. And we have taken it serious to ensure on the safety discussions that patients and providers have the safe access to these medications. One of the things that we have worked with the administration to do is to help set up the American Academy of Peptide Medicine. It is a nonpartisan based organization that is helping establish standards to ensure that when you receive BPC or CJC or name your peptide, that it is going through the safety testings to ensure it is what they say it is. In addition, from that perspective, we've tried to help establish safety standards moving forward. So if you were to receive 20 units, for example, of BPC each night from Brigham's Pharmacy or any other pharmacy, you would ensure that it is to the same 20 units of BPC moving forward. And finally, one of the big things that AAPM is doing is to ensure that we hear a lot about APIs that are coming in from China and other locations. And to ensure that we have safe access moving forward is to ensure that we've established safety standards. So that way, Brigham's Pharmacy or any other pharmacy or any other lab will have a set standard to be able to test those against. So that way, as we move forward with peptides and prescriptions are filled, we can ensure that patients have what they say they have and the proper strengths. So in other words, the proper standards that we would run through an HPLC or UPLC machine, the impurity testing, the potency testing, and the sterility testing to ensure that patients have safe access to these medications moving forward. And as Brigham mentioned, as somebody who previously presented at the October 24th and the December 24th PCAC hearings, I am delighted to be able to go back and present much more clinical references and materials that we have pulled since that date. One of the things that we have often heard is, well, why? If BPC was so great, why isn't it FDA approved and why isn't there pharma out there approving it? And Tony, you laid out a perfect example of what sort of a peptide is. It's in the nature. It's what we naturally have access to in our bodies as an example. And one of the things that a lot of folks don't realize is that because something is natural and it is a well-known substance, it can't be patented. And from a pharma perspective, if something can't be patented, they don't have a reason therefore to pay for the studies that go forward with these materials. And so without Secretary Kennedy's access and the administration's access to what they provided this week with PCAC hearings, many patients would never have safe access to these medications because the likelihood that pharma will move forward with these is very, very slim because they wouldn't be patentable because they are well known and naturally known. And if they're not patentable, the likelihood of FDA approval or moving forward with a phase 3 clinical trial is very small. Now, I do want to hit a misnomer that a lot of people don't realize. You hear an awful lot that there isn't a lot of information about these or these aren't well-known substances. But a good example of where you can find some of this clinical information is that when a clinical trial is done, for example, here in the United States, they have to list that information on clinicaltrials.gov. And so if folks go to clinicaltrials.gov and put in BPC 157, they will see that there's been more than 800 clinical trial references for many of these peptides that are put together. And for BPC specifically, it has been studied since 2015. So just listing on NIH and clinicaltrials.gov materials, you can see that there were phase 1 clinical trials going back more than a decade ago instead of studying these materials. Now, we as AAPM, and you'll see more of this as we present at the next PCAC hearing, have pulled, as I just mentioned, over 800 clinical references associated with, thanks to the help of many of the folks who were on this phone call today. And I look forward to being able to provide this information so that way we can have access to many more peptides. Now, one of the things that we hear about is what about how many peptides that we'll have access to and how big is this going to be? You know, the first announcement coming up in July, there's 7. In that perspective, the February 27, we have an additional potentially 5 to 7 substances as well. Now, as Secretary Kennedy has said on numerous podcasts, and I thank him personally for this from this perspective, is that we also, me as one of the attorneys, filed a lawsuit against the Biden administration for their illegal activities of placing some of these others on list 2. And so we also look forward to addressing some of those substances that are still involved with those litigations and being able to move forward from that perspective on things like CJC and Promorlin as well. And we believe that we've also have additional information associated with this that shows the safe nature of these. And we look forward to working with the administration to be able to provide those references as well. And so thank you. Again, I want to personally thank Brigham, Gary, Jillian, and all of the folks that have been associated with this. It would not have been done without you. And MAHA, especially for the last year and a half for the fight that we have worked up together, it means an awful lot to be able to say we've done it. We provided patients and providers access to this. And as we move forward, right, we look forward to being able to help set standards to ensure patients have the safe access to these medications. So thank you for everything.
Leanne says, great news. I agree.
I totally agree. And he is so right that you can't patent something that already exists in nature. Therefore, not only is the pharmaceutical company or world not going to be willing to fund any studies on it, but they also have an interest in circulating the idea that anything that comes in nature is less efficacious than that which is made in a factory, which is often untrue. Lithium is a great example. Lithium orotate is found in drinking water, in the spring water of an awful lot of people, in areas where the natural content of lithium orotate is higher. The suicide rate is lower. The homicide rate is lower. The depression rate is lower. Around 1974, the FDA approved lithium carbonate. The lithium is the same, the carbonate is what's different. Carbonate does not cross the blood-brain barrier well. Therefore, a person has to be given an extraordinarily high dose, which is going to produce kidney failure in a third of the people who take it long-term, including my own mom. Lithium orotate was available for sale in capsule form in a health food store. No one ever knew about it. And to this day, a lot of psychiatrists are not super familiar with it.
Awesome information. Let's see what Kyle is up to.
And highlight some of the tremendous work being done under the leadership of President Trump and Secretary Kennedy in the food and nutrition space. As Secretary Kennedy has highlighted several times, we will be releasing later this month, next week, data from the largest and most comprehensive infant formula contamination testing effort in U.S. history. That included over 300 different products for heavy metals, so lead, cadmium, arsenic, mercury, over 318 different pesticides, 22 different phthalates and plasticizers, and 30 PFAS compounds. That generated over 120,000 different data points. Look, breastfeeding is the gold standard. We all know that. And we want to support and promote breastfeeding whenever possible. But that's not always an option. So for those moms and parents who choose or must rely on infant formula, we believe the data is reassuring that the infant formula supply is safe. A lot of work has gone into protecting the infant formula supply. And look, there's a lot more work to be done. As many folks on this call know from their work in this space, many of these contaminants are ubiquitous in the environment, right? They're absorbed through the water, through the soil, through the air. These are very hard or impossible to remove. But this administration, under the leadership of President Trump and Secretary Kennedy, is absolutely committed to using all the tools in our toolbox to help ensure that that work continues. I also wanted to just highlight real quick, Tony, that we've been spending a lot of time in the first year of this administration, and really even longer than that, on standing up an independent post-market office within the foods program at FDA. So that never existed before. Before Secretary Kennedy's leadership in this administration, the FDA would only look at a chemical or additive in the food supply on an ad hoc basis in response to a citizen's petition, in response to adverse event reports, or congressional interest, for example. But there was no systematic process in place to actually look at chemicals and additives once they were approved or introduced into the food supply. And that resulted in processes where there's hundreds, thousands of chemicals in the food supply in the U.S. that have not been studied or reassessed in decades upon decades. And so, while this might not sound sexy on its face, this really is the fundamental framework for the future of FDA's work in the space. And it will lay the groundwork for decades of action by FDA regarding review, assessment, and ultimately removal of chemical additives from the food supply where appropriate. So, this is a process that is intended to last. It's based on gold standard science. It would be very easy to come in sort of with a wrecking ball and just try to take action on a number of things. That's easily reversed or struck down by courts. You have to do this the right way. For the lawyers on the phone like Lee, there's requirements under the Administrative Procedures Act that must be followed. And so we have built out a process that I believe is unimpeachable. It includes a systematic process, again, for establishing how FDA will monitor, triage, prioritize, assess, and manage food chemicals. And that also includes a new prioritization tool. If you really think about the number of chemicals in the food supply, it's impossible for us to systematically review each and every one of those. And so we've established a new prioritization tool that's going to help us rank chemicals for priority review. And so we're really excited about that. It's going to focus on things like the health effects of a potential chemical, the cardiovascular, cancer, toxicity risks, things like dietary exposure and whether that's increased over time, whether that chemical is found in foods intended for susceptible subpopulations like infants, and then new available data. We know a number of these chemicals and additives haven't been reviewed in years or decades. And so whether there's new available data, we think is really important to that assessment. And ultimately, we'll rank these chemicals. And based on that ranking, we'll prioritize them for review. So really excited about this new framework. The work continues across the board at FDA and HHS on a number of fronts, whether that's ultra-processed foods, GRAS standards, post-market framework, infant formula. We really are pedal to the metal on food reform at FDA. And thanks to everybody on this call for the support, and always happy to be on. Thanks, Tony.
All right. Peptides sold as supplements for fat loss, anti-aging, muscle gain, unapproved in Canada. Only prescription peptides and collagen protein powders, BBC 157, TB 500, CJC 125, 1295, I don't know, I can pronounce these, GHKCU NAD plus considered illegal. They say not studied in humans. No surprise here in Canada. Canada are taking away protein powders too, attacking all our natural supplements and trying to make them pharmaceutical or not available or so expensive, knowing they can afford them. So in Canada, we can't get any really helpful peptides besides protein powder, collagen, and pathetic.
That is a shame. That is a real shame, because if you're looking at preserving health, and again, people who are associated with MAHA are often very strongly supporting the idea of informed consent. Informed consent means please inform me about all the options. I'd love to be informed about the pharmaceuticals, the potential benefits and the potential risks. I'd love to be informed about nutraceuticals. I'd love to be informed about peptides, vitamins, minerals, amino acids. Another thing I want to say before we go to the next speaker is just that not only is each chemical being looked at in isolation, whereas newborn babies already have 2,000 chemicals in their system, but they're looking at those chemicals in the absence of other factors such as genetics, radiation and electromagnetic frequency exposure, emotional stress, and as well the size of an infant. If you're studying that chemical in an adult who's 100 or 200 pounds, that might have a very different impact on somebody who is new to the world and weighs 12 pounds.
Absolutely. Great points.
Yeah.
Let's see what Daniel Pompa has to say.
This gentleman and his firm actually sued. So now hospitals are saying, hold on, we don't want to be sued. So they're waking up to the fact and putting things in place to literally give parents more options on human breast milk, which has never been done until now. It should have been done. But anyways, a subject that I would love to talk more about, and Kyle, thank you for what you're doing on your end, but, we literally have to wake up to this fact that this can easily be prevented. Number one, these formulas can be made safe. So there's 2 lawsuits, one against the food companies themselves, and then one against the hospitals for not giving informed consent that this is, actually happening. So I think it's a subject here at MAHA we can bring and make more well known. Okay, I was asked to talk a little bit about peptides. Something that, I love and know a lot about, only really for my own usage. And I'm not going to give any medical advice here, I assure you. But that said, I was asked to just kind of talk simply about some of my favorite peptides and some of the ones that I've seen really great results with people with, and speak in a very basic way. Obviously, most people listening know that TB 500 and BP 157 are used for aches, pains, and at least in most of our refrigerators and freezers, you find those 2 peptides. And I'll add one more to that, and that's the GHKCU, which, ladies, most of you, I think, are experimenting with because of its effect on collagen. However, we have to realize that copper peptide, which really it acts literally more like a chaperone to copper. So, don't think that it can actually lead to copper toxicity. It doesn't. But that's its impact on the face and also the joints. And it's argued that as we age, we need a peptide like that. We need access to copper even more. And today that is becoming more difficult. So therefore, many people start taking that particular peptide, GHK-Cu, the Cu for the copper, and get great results. And I can tell you from the joint perspective, it really does work. And ladies, you would say that it absolutely does work in the face as well. It does.
Oh, no data. Looks like there he came back. It's live TV, people. Leanne says it's so maddening, and to your last comment,
157, and some of the other peptides that we've been discussing. Let me talk about a couple others that I think people need to hear about. One called IL-30-37, which works at the immune system in the gut. So we think of interleukins as driving an inflammatory process. This one puts the brakes on. And I can tell you, for people with gut trouble, the IL-37 works amazing. And yet so few people actually know about that particular peptide. So that might be one that people, put on their radar. I would add to that in this gut protocol, if you will, if we're, again, not giving medical advice, but I would add the thymosin alpha-1, which also has a modulating effect on immune system. It kind of brings down hyperimmunity and upregulates good immunity, if you will. But it does seem to work in the gut, especially if you take it with the if you take it with the BPC 157. And for the gut, I like to take the oral form of BPC 157 in a liposome, which, again, it's getting easier to get. And obviously, many of the practitioners are carrying good ones not from China, and we're going to be able to have safe access to that. So, those peptides, I think, really are some of the ones that stand out that seem to work for most people. And I will add, some of the brain peptides are worth, especially so many people with anxiety. There's one called C-Link, S-E-L-I-N-K, and then even C-Max, S-E-M-M-A-X, that both work very differently in the brain, but can help brain fog memory, the C-Max that is, and the C-Link more for anxiety. So I hope that just kind of gives a broad base. That's what I was asked to do, of some peptides that are very safe and work amazing for people. And again, I think they're studied, and with some of the new legislation, we're going to have better access, safer peptides, not from China, and that is applauded.
Safer peptides. I'll give that. That sounds good to me. What are your thoughts, Susan?
My thoughts are that I'm interested in peptides, particularly because I have found that BP 157 to be so helpful in the joint department. I am interested in the gut one, the interleukins, because we've had gut trouble in the house, one of my family members, and I'd love to be able to tell the person, this is another thing that she could put in her repertoire that could potentially be helpful. The immune modulating effect. People may not be familiar with that term. For the plethora of people that have an autoimmune condition, things that are immune stimulating may not always be indicated because your immune system is already attacking your own tissue. Things that are immune modulating help the immune system to basically work smarter and not harder. And so things that are immune modulating are going to boost up an underactive immune system. They're going to calm down an overactive one. And just before MAHA started, I was telling Liam that apparently there's a lot of edible mushrooms, not the psychoactive type, that also have immune modulating properties.
Awesome. Okay, is this the food babe, or I'm not sure. Van, people versus poison.
There with us because the justices are going to be hearing one of the most consequential cases in U.S. history. That morning, they'll be hearing Monsanto versus Durnell, a case in which Bayer, a German corporation that acquired Monsanto back in 2018, is asking the court to rule that an EPA-approved label should be enough to shield them from cancer lawsuits. And so this would have if this case were to go forward in favor of Bayer, a win could shield Bayer from accountability of over 60,000 other cancer lawsuits already pending, and also set a precedent for affecting tens of thousands of pesticide products currently on the market. There's over 57,000 chemicals that it could apply to. So this is very consequential. This is about humanity. This is about generations to come and our children's generation. And that's why we are all gathering there at the Supreme Court. Tony, you're going to be speaking. I'm very excited about that. We have Kelly, who's on this call later. She's going to be speaking. We have people from both sides of the aisle, Representative Shelley Pengree and Representative Thomas Massey. We have farmers like Joel Salatin and Mark Dula. We have people who are, generational farmers like Zach Lane, who's running to be governor in Iowa. We have nonprofits coming to the table like Friends of the Earth and Center for Food Safety and Beyond Pesticides and Children's Health Defense and others. It is going to be an enormous gathering of people that are going to say, enough's enough. We do not stand for corporate liability for one of the most evil corporations of the world, definitely one that has given so many farmers cancer and people cancer with their product. Just yesterday, in an exchange on the Hill, Secretary Kennedy confirmed glyphosate causes cancer. It was stunning. And the Democrat that was pushing him said, hey, you're being kind of diplomatic about your answer about glyphosate. And he's like, I just called glyphosate cancerous. What do you mean I'm being diplomatic, right? And this is kind of what we're up against. Bayer has increased their lobbying efforts by 16% just in the last quarter of this year. This court case to them is the most important thing. And this is why they convinced someone at the DOJ to submit an amicus brief on behalf of the Trump administration. This is why they were pushing for glyphosate to be a national defense priority and why they've been threatening the administration that they're going to pull glyphosate from the market. They've been doing that kind of rigorous activity for year after year. Glyphosate has only increased no matter who's in office. And if we don't all come together, we are not going to have a chance to defeat this. And this is the moment that we put all politics aside and we all come together in this big way to make our voices heard. It's going to be a spectacle you've never seen before in Washington. I think it's going to be the biggest food movement we've ever seen happen, food movement rally. And I'm really excited for all the people that are coming into town for this event and going to make their voice heard, because this is our moment to really shut down the whole idea that corporations could be not held liable for causing cancer, that the Farm Bill should has this type of language. We're going to be shutting that down. The fact that 21 different states are looking at different bills to do this in their states, we're going to say enough's enough, and we are going to fight back. And I think the people can be even more powerful than the money that's being spent in Washington. But every single day we are up against enormous amount of special interest from this company that are using their spokespeople through the farm bureaus, through CropLife, that seem very farmer focused, but they're pushing their chemicals forward. And so we got to fight back. And this is our moment. See you at the Supreme Court, April 27th at 9 a.m.
April 27th, people versus poison. I love it. Susan, what do you have to say?
William, are you with me? 9 a.m. Eastern, so 10
Yeah.
a.m. time. Terrific.
We'll stream it live. Awesome.
The only thing I can add to what she said, because she said it well, is that the definition of insanity is to keep doing the same thing and expecting a different result. So already we know that the United States is by far the sickest and shortest lived of all of the developed countries in the world. We also know that our regulations allowing pesticides, mercury in dentistry, all kinds of things, are the loosest in the world. Wonder if there's a connection. It just seems to me that in no other universe would we allow companies that are deliberately, as the cigarette industry did many decades ago, when they know that they have information that this is going to be harmful to people, something is addictive like opioids, why are we letting families like the Sacklers walk away with only a slap on the wrist? They were completely untouched. Their corporations were touched, but why does that has no impact on them? They are free to live in
Yeah,
their houses and fly on private jets and do whatever they want to do. And I think it
it's
is
crazy. So let's
far
see
and
what's
away different.
up with Rand Paul.
To provide priority vouchers for companies that make drugs like psilocybin and MDMA. Director McCary stated this National Priority Review pilot program that he has started is to speed up approval of drugs with innovative cures. His goal is to approve drugs in an estimated 2 months instead of over 6 months in other FDA priority review programs. And the years it takes for normal drugs, we're trying to speed that up. The executive order also directs the DEA and the FDA to create a regulatory framework for these drugs to quickly make their way to eligible patients. I've introduced something similar, the Breakthrough Therapies Act, in the last Congress. This would reschedule MDMA and psilocybin from Schedule 1 to Schedule 2. This would prevent federal bureaucrats from restricting access to these potentially game-changing treatments. Schedule 1 drugs are defined as drugs with no currently accepted medical use and a high potential for abuse. This statement, if it was ever true, cannot really be said in good faith regarding the psychedelics. There have been numerous studies that have shown promise in psychedelics in treating PTSD, depression, anxiety, and even compulsive habits like smoking in a controlled environment, supervised by a physician. The current standards of practice is not good enough. About a third of the people with PTSD and depression are resistant to the current standard of practice, whether that be cognitive behavior therapy, anti-anxiety medicine, antidepressants. To be fully effective, the executive order needs to be codified, though, into law, or else the agencies will find an excuse for not being able to create a framework for physicians to administer psychedelics. My Freedom to Heal Act, which I introduced this Congress, would mandate that the DEA create a process for physicians to administer FDA breakthrough therapies that are still Schedule 1 drugs without losing their medical license. This executive order is a huge step in the right direction, but Congress needs to pass the Freedom to Heal Act to guarantee that the unnecessary red tape will not stop treatment with psychedelics. It's time for the stigma against Big Pharma approved products to end.
All right, absolutely. Leanne says, "Go Americans, go! This Canadian is with you." Actually,
Thank you, Leanne.
Canada
You
is
are
worse than
the
the U.S.
best.
now. Yeah, Canada is supposed to have this awesome, socialized medicine. Our food is terrible, she says.
Well, I'm
Your
excited that
thoughts?
the food in hospitals is about to turn into actual food instead of processed chemicals, thanks to what RFK did. I think that's a huge step in the right direction. And I also think it's great that now, and only because he insisted upon it, doctors are going to have to take classes in nutrition, which is insanity to me that that has not happened until 2026, that medical schools were absent any instruction in nutrition when we know how foundational that is to human health. However, better late than never. So thank you, Bobby Kennedy, for doing it. And the only other thing
Yeah.
I'll say is the suicide rate is off the chart in all demographics. In veterans, I believe it's like, I don't know, I want to say 120 a day in this country. Children, second leading cause of death for kids between the ages of 10 and 24. I believe it's the seventh leading cause of death for our whole society. We need other options because the ones we have are clearly not working.
Clearly not working. All right, let's see what Kelly Ryson has to say.
As a point of comparison, a few years ago, I was at the previous administration's FDA with two organizations, GMO Science and Moms Across America, with some horrific data on what was in the heavy metals that were in baby formula. And we presented this with the pediatrician, and there was no response and no reaction. And meanwhile, the baby formula is the first thing a baby has for the first many months of their life. So it's such a critical window. So I just want to thank the FDA and that work on that. It's enormous and can't be understated. So back to what I usually am working on, in alignment also with this rally next week, we also are all working very hard on the Farm Bill. As probably you've heard in previous media hubs, the Farm Bill, it currently includes a pesticide liability shield, and it is rapidly moving. It's gone through committees. It's rapidly moving to the House floor for a vote. But first, it's going through something called the Rules Committee, which is an area that we can get an amendment slipped in to potentially strip out the pesticide liability shield. So we've been working really hard with a bunch of incredible Congress people from both sides. And just today, several Congress people filed amendments to strip the liability shield out of the Farm Bill, including a bipartisan amendment from Shelley Pingree and Thomas Massey, who have co-sponsors, also bipartisan co-sponsors. Anna Paulina Luna and Nancy Mace also filed separate amendments to strip the pesticide liability shield out of the Farm Bill. So we won't know until Monday afternoon whether or not the Rules Committee has accepted any of these amendments to go to the floor for a vote. So in the meantime, we're calling on people to call the members of the Rules Committee, especially the Republicans, and tell them how much this matters. It is a crisis moment. In the same way that Supreme Court case is a crisis moment, this is a crisis moment for our country. We do not want chemical companies to have a liability shield. Looking down the line to next week, when the Farm Bill hits the floor, we're going to also be calling for all hands on deck, to be calling all the Congress people who will be voting on this and ask them to reject a Farm Bill that has a liability shield in it. So then pivoting a bit, my organization, American Regeneration, I run it with my co-executive director, Ryland Engelhart. We are hosting a 2-day gathering at Sovereignty Ranch in Bandera, Texas. And this is going to be an incredible event. It's called the New American Dream. We are going to focus on restoring health to soil, to food systems, to people, and the American spirit. We're partnering with the group Acres USA. For those who are in the ag world, know they've long committed to sustainable farming ideas. And we're going to have experts that are talking about regenerative agriculture, land stewardship, livestock integration, nutrient-dense food, all those things that are going to make the new dietary guidelines possible and truly restore health to Americans. There's going to be some people speaking there that you will know. Jimmy Emmons from NRCS, who was critical in the $700 million from the USDA for regenerative agriculture. Nate Sheets, who's the new Ag Commissioner of Texas and highly MAHA supportive. And farmers Rick Clark will also be there talking. And so if you are interested in coming down to this beautiful ranch in Texas, we still have tickets available. You can go to AmericanRegeneration.org and please join us. We're also going to be spending a lot of time talking about alternatives to pesticides. So the kinds of things that Secretary Kennedy has been talking about investing in so that we can get off of the chemical treadmill. We are going to be featuring a bunch of people that have those solutions, including robots and alternative technologies and simply regenerative practices, to really outline what the potentials are. So, and finally, I hope everyone is coming to this rally on Monday. Just want to double down what Bonnie was saying. It's going to be epic. It's going to be something that no one wants to miss.
Doctors not having any knowledge of nutrition? Leanne says, yes, Susan, crazy. It's crazy,
It's
absolutely nuts.
It's completely insane. So the only thing I'll say about the breast milk stuff is, if people are going to do breast milk banks, that's great. However, I'm not sure that I understand why we're not using wet nurses. And the reason is that their breast milk is alive. It has enzymes, it has protective properties, it has antibodies to whatever germs or diseases or viruses the mother has just been exposed to. Once you freeze that, which is the typical process prior to donating to a breast milk bank, you've destroyed a lot of that. And then my understanding, I think, is that the breast milk bank then also heats it at high heat, probably for safety reasons. But I wonder why we don't just do the old-fashioned thing, because you eliminate the middleman, you preserve a lot of what's beneficial about breast milk. What are your thoughts, Liam? Or do we need to go back to Mr.
Leanne also says, Canada, the capital of the world evil. Yes, very
Leanne,
I'm
we
not a
have
big
room
fan of
for you
socialism.
here.
What's that?
I told Leanne, we have room for you here. Come to the United States. Come to Philadelphia. We'll set up practice
That's
together
right.
for menopausal women.
Absolutely, with open arms. Okay, so looks like they're having trouble with their audio.
We got to turn off my mute.
There we go. All right.
So it's good. It's really good here. And, a lot of my previous speakers stole some of my thunder. They hit the nail right on the head regarding peptides. I find myself in a lot of peptide debates and discussions recently. And I think a lot of people think of peptides as being these new, sort of very novel, recently discovered synthetic polymers that are out there that we're making wild health claims about. But I think it's important to just back up for a second and talk about what peptides really are. They fall into the category of something called biological polymers, and they're in the same category as carbohydrates, proteins, fats. Peptides are actually capable of being broken down enzymatically by the body. I have a saying that I say all the time: more of what God gave us and less of what man makes us. Very often, even practicing physicians, classically trained physicians, don't realize that the vast majority of these peptides are made endogenously in the body. GHKC, the copper peptide, is an endogenous peptide. GLP-1s are endogenous peptides. We make them in response to nutrient density. Insulin is a peptide. Ghrelin, where we synthesize BPC 157 from gastric juice. And what's important to know is when these compounds enter the body and provide signaling to the body, they're then enzymatically broken down and we eliminate the waste. Most of everything else that we talk about on this call and what Vani has been fighting so hard against and forever chemicals and glyphosate, they fall into the category of pharmaceuticals, synthetics, and chemicals. These are things the body doesn't recognize. It doesn't have enzymes for it, doesn't have a mechanism to eliminate the waste. They don't go through the same transsulfuration and glutathione pathways that a peptide would go through. The reason why we can't measure peptides in the bloodstream, usually very shortly after administering them, is because they truly are gone. They have provided a signal, they've been enzymatically broken down, whatever waste is left over has gone through a natural biophysiologic pathway and it's gone. So the stacking of reactions and tachyphylaxis, which is a desensitization response, you don't see these kinds of things as frequently in peptides. I also just wanted to say that I'm not a physician, I'm not licensed to practice medicine, but I owned a very large functional medicine clinic for the better part of 10 years. I exited in 2005. And I just checked our data, and we had written in 10 years, our clinical team had written nearly 104,000 peptide prescriptions. And of the 104,000 peptide prescriptions that we wrote through our functional clinic, we did not have a single adverse event reported that required medical attention. There was itching at the injection site. There was some, swelling from time to time. There were people that reacted to things like DMSO, dimethyl sulfoxide, which are used to suspend some of these for shelf life, but in these lyophilized powders, the oral peptides, patches, creams, we had no adverse events that required medical attention. And I realize that is big data, and it's not a peer-reviewed, randomized, published, placebo-controlled clinical trial, but we've never done a peer-reviewed, published, randomized clinical trial on parachutes. And I don't think anybody on this call would jump out of an airplane without one because we have data. So to say that there's no data on peptides is really just ignoring the obvious. There are enormous meta-analysis studies, there are enormous big data studies that prove the safety and efficacy of these compounds that are largely made in the body, but most importantly, are recognized and enzymatically broken down by the body. So I think very often we fear the unknown because we don't understand it. But if we just took a little bit of time to understand how these act and how they're constructed in the body, I think you'd have much more widespread adoption of peptides and peptide therapies. So I'll yield back the rest of my time. Thank you so much for having me.
Honestly, I'm a tad jealous Canada isn't doing this, Leanne says. Maybe I need to start something there. Yeah, why not, right?
There's room in the office in
MAHA.
We share the office space between me and a few other ladies, and I'm pretty sure there's an opening right now. So come on down. We would love to have you. Or I would anyway. I can't speak for anyone else, but I can already tell you would be fun to work with.
She says that's That's sweet. That's good news. And yes,
Yeah.
peptides are not new. All right. Looks like we have Dr. Oz in the house. Let's see what
Bring on
Dr. Oz has
Dr.
to
Oz.
say.
Steph Carlton spoke at the American Hospital Association. I had spoken there the day before. This is a very large group of nonprofit hospitals. They help shape the narrative to how hospitals and the government and regulators work together. And the secretary and I went down to Miami about 2 weeks ago, and we took the new dietary guidelines to the first hospital in the country, which is the Jack Nicklaus Children's Hospital, that agreed, committed, signed a pledge that they were going to start using the dietary guidelines for the first time to guide the way they were going to use food as a nutrient, as a healing element in the hospital. Now, just to remind everybody, saying something that tastes like hospital food is a pejorative for a reason. We throw away about a quarter of all the food that's served to patients. And the reason that's important is because if we didn't waste that money buying food that no one was going to eat and just instead invested that money in healthier foods that were made bespoke the way the patient wants them, then we'd actually get better nutrients in the patients recovering from big illnesses, and everyone would be better off. It wouldn't even cost you more. In fact, we know from the general experience at Tampa General Hospital, which is a place where Jeff Zakarian, a great chef, well known from his TV appearances, he's been on this show. Tony's had him on in the past. But he's been able to demonstrate in a pilot they launched last October that the total cost of food went up 5%. To put it in perspective, the budget of the hospital is $4 billion. Their food expense is $12 million. So food is a tiny amount of the budget of a hospital, but if you can actually not change it materially and get much, much, much better food, it's a huge win for the institution. Patients like it much better. They get the tools they need to recover. Food has always been a nutrient since Hippocrates and others began mentioning it thousands of years ago. So we've got an opportunity now to scale this. Jack Nicklaus went on, the hospital joined, they signed the pledge. And yesterday, Steph and Chris launched this for all the hospitals in the country, and a bunch of hospitals signed on. So now we have the American Hospital Association embracing the concept that their member institutions should look at the dietary guidelines, think differently about how they're serving food, and not get so locked into what all the doctors on this call, nurses know. We classically say it's, to 1,800 ADA diet with 2 grams of sodium. It makes the food taste miserable. It's purely based on a few numbers that don't describe the nutrient value of food. And because they're not overtly toxic, doctors and hospitals have accepted them as reasonable, so they contract with these huge companies that make nutrient devoid meals that and they're not really palatable and therefore don't help our cause. So this is another huge step forward for the MAHA movement. And I wanted to connect everyone very clearly, the dietary guidelines, which you should all be seeing and using, with the way we supply our hospitals with guidance on what foods to eat. Now, one other thing to add to this, I mentioned this briefly last week, but there's more data now coming out showing that high quality red meat consumed by Americans who have one of the Alzheimer's genes, which is 27% of us. So a quarter of the American people have a gene that makes them more prone to Alzheimer's. I mean, meaningfully more prone, especially if they're women. If those people eat high quality red meat, their Alzheimer's symptoms seem to go down. I'll say that again. You eat the red meat that for years we have dishonestly told the American people was not good for them. You actually reduce the incidence of Alzheimer's if you have one of these genes. Now, that doesn't mean red meat's good for everything, right? It's probably not great for diabetes. And I'm not talking about processed meat. That does not kielbasa we're talking about. It's high quality meat that has nutrients in it like zinc and iron and other ones that are important to general health. And I believe this will be helpful for the American people to begin to realize that it's not a one-size-fits-all for dietary guidance, but the dietary guidelines took into account the possibility that we would have examples of this nature. So I'm glad I had a chance to opine on these issues, and I didn't cut out while I was driving here and trying to do my day job. And I wish you all the best. Thank you, Tony. Congrats.
Susan, you were ahead of the conversation mentioning terrible hospital food. Yes, you were.
Right. I mean, honestly, let's go. All stories lead back to Louise Longstreth, my mom. I'm about 8 years old, and I'm having an argument with her about Jell-O. My mom was a nurse. Well, Jello has to be good for you because they serve it to you in hospitals. I'm little and I'm reading the box. Mom, sugar. Mom, red dye number 40. I don't think, well, it must be good for you because they serve it to you in hospitals. So she wasn't altogether wrong. Gelatin does have some health benefits if it's the real deal, not if they're going to throw in red dye number 40 and all the other stuff. The other thing I'll say about the red meat stuff is that not all red meat is created equal. If you're getting it right from the farm and it's grass fed and the grass was not sprayed with pesticides and the cows were happy and all of the rest, I think that's a very different product than cows that were in a CAFO. Help me with what that stands for. Confined animal feeding operation, I think.
Yeah,
And
in a
that's
prison,
where the
in a
cows-
torture. Yeah.
yeah. And when they're
Yep.
smashed in, that's a whole different life of that cow. The nutrient content of the meat is also different. So meat that has been grass-fed has a higher content of, believe it's omega-3 fatty acids that are beneficial for us. So that's another thing to pay attention to is I would beware the meat that comes from the grocery store. I would source the small farmer. They're around.
Absolutely. All right, let's see our next guest here. William,
There is
what's
a cure
up?
for many types of cancer in the form of antiparasitics. This all started when my mother-in-law went into the hospital with bowel obstruction and didn't want to go through the horrors of traditional chemotherapy. So she at 83, she just wanted to go home and die, basically, to hospice. So she was actually so bad that she received last rites in the hospital because they thought she wouldn't make the 2-mile trip home. So she went home, and I had read about fenbendazole online, and I looked at the science, and it looked like, this is something that seems to be relatively safe. It's available. You can buy it on Amazon or in Tractor Supply. And, so her husband mixed it into her yogurt, and she started, after about a month, she started to look better, feel better. She fired hospice. After about 2 months, she went back to the oncologist and found that her blood tumor markers had been cut in half. The only thing she was doing was fenbendazole. And within 4 to 5 months, she was completely healed. No tumors, no sign of disease, and her breast cancer has been gone ever since. So she's alive today because of an animal antiparasitic. So what fenbendazole is a you give it to your dog. It's approved for animals, obviously. There's human variants as well, but it's it attacks parasites by exploiting a structural defect in their microtubule system. Miraculously, cancer cells have the same structural defect that is exploited by fenbendazole. And it only attacks the cancer cell or the parasite, which is why it has virtually no side effects. So my mother-in-law had no side effects. So word of her story spread. So in terms of trying to manage telling the same story over and over, I started a Substack, and I posted her story on there. The Substack is called fenbendazole.substack.com. And what started to happen after that were other people started to post, hey, it worked for me as well. So I had this library of case reports. And most people were more or less given up for dead. They'd gone through traditional standard of care therapy and were told basically, there's nothing we can do for you. And that's when they started to do fenben. And it's all different types of cancers, all solid tumor cancers. So what was interesting is, so this is at the individual level. One thing that was that I found in the course of doing the research for the book was that cancer incidence rates vary greatly around the world. So there are some countries where the cancer incidence rate is 1/3 or 1/4 of what it is in the US. If you look at all of the countries of the world and group them by whether they administer anti-parasitic drugs or not. And that seems to be the key difference is places like India, Mexico, Argentina, they have a public health program where they deworm the population once or twice a year using drugs very similar to fenbendazole, mostly albendazole and mebendazole. Those countries, and there's 123 of them, when you group them all together, they have half the incidence of cancer of the rich Western countries, more developed countries that don't use antiparasitics. So it looks like, from the epidemiological data, that antiparasitics like fenben, like albendazole, are actually preventing cancer as well. So it could be one of two mechanisms. The first mechanism is obviously the direct anti-cancer effects of the antiparasitics attacking microtubules, and they work so well because they have 10 other ways to kill the cancer cell, not just one like standard of care drug. But it could also be that undiagnosed, untreated, subthreshold chronic parasitic infections, which the CDC has determined is rampant in the US. Peter Hotez of COVID fame did a study for the CDC that found that up to 60 million people in the US alone are infected with Toxoplasma gondii from cats. So that undiagnosed subthreshold parasitic infection causes chronic inflammation. And we know that chronic inflammation is a risk factor for cancer. So it could be one of two mechanisms. So with this isn't French science. You know, a lot of the basic preclinical data comes from Hopkins, and ironically, the rest of the world is kind of getting out in front of it of us on this. So it's fenbendazole is a cheap, safe, 50-year-old drug that may be an important cancer tool that we're not using. And this is something, the use of repurposed drugs to treat something like cancer is something that the MAHA movement should really take a look at. Thank you.
Wow. Cancer is a parasite. Wow.
Cancer is a
fenbendazole.
And what it is not is a deficit of adequate levels of chemotherapy or radiation. So I would always, for myself, I would look for the interventions that are going to do no harm or are going to do less harm. Whereas what I observe in people around me is that usually with chemo and radiation, there's secondary damage to other parts of the body. So radiation can damage the skin, it can damage the bones, it can it burned a hole in the esophagus of my grandfather when he was treated for esophageal cancer. Chemotherapy, we all know, is highly toxic. When a relative of mine had chemotherapy, other people were not meant to use the toilet after she had used the toilet until it had been sanitized because of how toxic chemo is. So I already mentioned another time, Liam, I believe, when we were doing one of these simulcasts, that I saw a doctor years ago who had studied with a Native American medicine guy who was very skilled at keeping his Native American tribes healthy. And he was a huge believer in deworming and believed that just like with your dogs, you're going to do it several times a year regardless to stay ahead of problems, that people should do the same. So parasites, I know, can be found in the brain and can cause neurological symptoms or depression or anxiety. They can be found in the liver. I think they can be found in virtually any organ of the body. And I don't think you ever get rid of them, but low-key things that don't cost money. Add cloves to your diet. Whole cloves, and I imagine clove powder would kills, I believe, the parasites and their eggs, which is important. So if you like cloves and you want to put it in your oatmeal, in your smoothie, in your whatever you're having, I looked up on Amazon while he was talking. There is a combination herb. It is $27.50 for 200 pills. It comes to 14 cents a pill. It has some herbs in it and also clove to fight parasites.
Sounds great. All right, let's see what Dr. Eric Berg is up to.
It's so cheap of a remedy. It's what, $5 a dose. So of course that's why they're not looking at that. But I did a video on it and I was blown away at how fascinating these anti-parasitic parasitics or dewormers work on cancer. But I wanted to shift gears on something that happened 3 weeks ago that not a lot of people are talking about, and I want to just put this on everyone's radar. So in 2007, Congress passed a law, and it says if you run a drug study in America, you have to post the results, all of them, not just the ones that worked, but the ones that did not work and the ones where they hurt people as well. And so it goes on a public website, and once 1 year after the trial ends, and that's the law. So, and when I say results, I'm not talking about, we did a study. I mean, the actual numbers, did the drugs work on the thing you said that they were measuring, how many people got sick, how many people died. All of that is required by law. Because if a company runs 10 studies and only 2 out of 8 work, and they only show the good ones and suppress the bad ones, then the doctor and the patient are misled, especially in the consent form, the informed consent, when patients sign off that they know the risks and benefits. So that's the law for about 19 years. And the fine for breaking this law is about $13,000 a day per trial omitted. So every day they're late, the meter runs. 13 grand per day. So take a wild guess how many fines the FDA has collected in those 19 years. If you guess 0, you are correct. 0, not $1. So Oxford University did the math, and if the FDA had enforced the law, pharma would owe $19 billion. So, and this is where it gets interesting, because 3 weeks ago, the end of March, the new FDA commissioner, Dr. Marty Makary, put out this announcement, and he said pharma has been suppressing unfavorable clinical trial results. And he used the word suppressing, which means hiding, not showing, omitting. So this is like the first time a commissioner in that job has come out in the open and said it. I mean, he sent messages to 2,200 companies, 2,200, okay? And the message wasn't a fine. It was just saying, hey, we see you. We know you're out of compliance. You have to fix it. That's it. And you might say that's a little thing, but just take a look at the enforcement that happened in the last 19 years. The only letters that were sent out were like 8 in 19 years. So the way the enforcement actually works is step 1, you send a message out. Step 2, you get a pre-notice. 3, you get a notice of non-compliance, and then the fines start kicking in. So, as being part of MAHA, we have to back up the commissioner. And this is super important to put on your radar, because it's what makes up the informed consent. The thing that not just the patient, but the doctor sees is knowing that what you're getting these patients into and what they're getting into, and so they have all the data to make the appropriate decision whether they want to take it or not. So this is a very important thing that just happened. The door is open. Now we got to kick that thing wide open and go all the way. That way, when people have the informed consent, all of the data is there to make the right decision. Thanks, Tony.
On the subject of risk reward, Leanne says exactly, Susan.
COVID.
That's
Yep, absolutely. I mean, yes, and COVID is COVID. Ivermectin, it had won the Nobel Peace Prize for a great drug, and I think in however many decades it had been used, there were either no fatalities or a handful, like a really safe drug. And of course, the media, which is more than 50% funded by the pharmaceutical industry, put forth a lot of trying to sort of skew perception that, oh, they're giving you horse dewormer. Sure, we animals, and we take all the same drugs. We take Prozac, so do the animals. We take antibiotics, so do the animals. We take ivermectin, so do the animals. Curing river blindness, I think, was the thing that ivermectin won a Nobel Prize for. I was going to say something else, just how unconscionable it is that in 19 years, not a single fine was issued, when we all know how very out of compliance the pharmaceutical companies are in not releasing their data, and that data is itself already flawed because, as I mentioned before, a previous time, if Liam and I are in the study and it's an 8-week study, and 4 weeks in, I bail and say too many side effects, can't handle it, I'm out. I am never included in the study. They code Susan Moroto as non-compliant. Therefore, the side effect profile appears to be lower than what it really is. There's so many ways that pharmaceutical companies get around things, and I am all for mailing the letters, although quite honestly, I do want more than that. I want a lot more than that. So if they mail the letters this week and then they follow it up with another next week, and then the third they slap the fine on, I'm good with that. If we're just going to stop with the letters, I'm not okay with that.
Leanne says,
How about you, Liam? Or Leanne.
exactly,
Leanne, thoughts?
Exactly, Susan. All
Yeah.
right, let's see what the next guest has to offer.
And he and 2 or 3 others say that we're on the right track and that Bobby's doing good work. You know, you've been standing by him and helping him get so much important work done when nobody in the country would say something good about him, when no newspaper in the country would say anything good about him. But you've been saying good things about him and making it possible for him to get such incredible work done for so long, for so many years. And I'm so grateful, and I love you, and welcome. Wait, now I can't hear you.
Live TV. No sound.
Is that better?
Yes.
There we go.
Good. Love you too, Tony, and thank you to you and everyone at MAHA Action. I can't express how much it means to all of us when you prop us up from the outside. It keeps us going, and also helped us keep our energy during these hearings. The secretary just finished 7 hearings over the last 2 weeks, and you know, it feels like whiplash most of the time. You go from you know, Republicans sharing their gratitude to the secretary for all the efforts he's made, to the Democrats who, not all the time, but most of the time, just want to grandstand and try to make him look bad. But he just did an incredible job at all 7 hearings, and you know, was able to share the historic year and the health reforms that HHS has achieved, you know, some of the most sweeping public health reforms in modern history. As we all know from MFN and Trump RX, HHS has dramatically reduced drug prices. We all know about the food pyramid. We flipped the food pyramid upside down with one simple message: eat real food. The FDA's removed petroleum-based dyes. We're working to close the loophole on the GRAS standard so we can reduce chemicals in our food. We committed $50 billion to the Rural Health Transformation Fund. Also, thanks to the pressure of Secretary Kennedy, more than 50 medical schools have voluntarily committed to adding 40 plus hours of nutrition education to their for their medical students, compared to about 4 hours. And then our biggest 2 new announcements that I believe everyone on the call is well aware of. One is FDA took a long overdue action to restore science, accountability, and the rule of law by moving 12 peptides off Category 2. They're bringing them to PCAC, which is our Pharmacy Compounding Advisory Committee, at the next 2 meetings beginning in July. And so this action immediately helps reverse the dangerous black market that developed due to the Biden era decision to move those actually 19 peptides to get Category 2. And then last Saturday was a very historic day for us when President Trump signed an EO removing barriers to psychedelic drugs as potential treatment for serious mental illness like Ibogaine. That was a tremendous announcement. As you probably all know, Secretary Kennedy is committed to addressing addiction and mental health issues, and President Trump's courage and leadership on Saturday signing that EO is a step in the right direction. So, like I've said before, it's just thrilling to be here at HHS, being able to support the president and Secretary Kennedy and Dr. Oz and Marty McCary and Jay Bhattacharya at NIH on these, essential components of our desire to get prevention prevention is the key element of how we're going to run our healthcare system to go from a sick care system to a true healthcare system and make America healthy again. So with all the efforts of everybody on this call and the work of MAHA Action, I'm confident we'll get there. So thanks so much for all you guys do.
All right. On the subject of Alzheimer's and meat, what we were talking about.
Leanne's my girl.
Red, good quality meat has vitamin B12, iron, zinc, protein, because these deficiencies, especially B12, are linked to cognitive decline, and absolutely yes, higher in omega-3 fats, better nutrient profile, and more anti-inflammatory. Only get it from a butcher or a market, just like you said, Susan, where they only sell grass-fed, grass-finished beef. Makes sense how it can benefit the brain. Absolutely.
I will jump in and say I want everybody to look for 100% grass-fed, because with everybody being so slimy and deceptive with their advertising, I can easily see that a farmer could feed the cow 99% grains, give it 1 or 2 or 8 blades of grass. It ate grass, right? I can call it grass-fed. 100% grass-fed is what it. Now, Leanne, do you feel the same? Do you feel differently? We'll see what Leanne says.
That's interesting. That's a very...
There are people who have gotten better on a carnivore diet, which is super interesting, because the conventional wisdom is that plants are good for you and can't do any harm. However, plants do have lectins. They also have oxalates. Anything else, Liam, that can potentially mess with you?
Dr. Peterson, right? Dr. Peterson was famously...
Sounds vaguely familiar. Say more.
Yeah. He went on a carnivore diet, and he says it changed his life.
And I think it also depends what you're coming from. If your diet was 100% Doritos and Coke, and you go carnivore, chances are you're going to feel better. I also think some of it depends on your genetics and your lineage. So I do think there's something to, if your people came from a certain part of the world, maybe you're going to do better on the diet that people in that part of the world ate. Not everybody knows, but sometimes intuitively, people will say, oh, I feel better when I eat X in such a way.
Absolutely. Okay, looks like they're maybe ending the program. Let's see what they have to say as they leave here.
Has to be. And that, everybody in this country overwhelmingly wants the administration, both this one and the next one and everyone, to fight to make Americans as healthy as they can be. And we want to be partners in that battle, and we're going to fight it for as long as it takes. So as we saw with HR 2899, when we activate the MAHA Army, all the MAHA warriors using our tracker, we can make a difference. And your voices are heard. And together, we can move healthier. We can move closer to making this country healthier. So following this call, you're going to get an email with a recording of all of the different clips from this show and calls to action. So please look at these calls to action and follow them. And please share all of our content as widely as you possibly can. That's what's going to make this movement more and more healthy. And then, next week, April 27th, join the People vs. Poison rally. I'm going to be speaking at it. There's so many great speakers, so many people who are on this call today who are going to be speaking in front of the Supreme Court in Washington, D.C. Go to the peopleversuspoison.org to sign up. And thanks so much once again for joining us. We look forward to seeing you next Wednesday and every Wednesday at 4 o'clock.
For decades, Bayer and Monsanto have poisoned our food and our families with glyphosate, the active ingredient in Roundup. And now, facing over 170,000 cancer lawsuits worth $16 billion, Bayer wants the Supreme Court to bail them out. It's time for the people to take a stand. On April 27th, we will march together at the Supreme Court. America demands equal justice under the law, with no immunity for chemical companies. It's The People versus Poison, April 27th in Washington, D.C.
America's children are sick, and moms have been betrayed. The time for empty promises, long past. Now is a time for action. MAHA is the most powerful force of collective action in generations. The grassroots power of moms and activists has created an army of health warriors with more reach than all mainstream media combined. Together, we can end the chronic disease epidemic. MAHA's influence is reaching millions. It's reaching Congress. And that energy, these chain reactions, are working.
How about Operation Stork Speed?
Dozens of food companies removing toxic ingredients.
I plan to lead by example.
MAHA is now.
We're talking about how to change the culture.
The American people want America healthy again.
It is a renaissance moment in health in America.
For health, freedom, and the truth. Join us at MAHA Action.
All right. That was pretty awesome. And we lost Susan. Susan, where'd you go? Hopefully she'll be back. Let's we've got a few messages here. Leanne is saying she gets her meat from I get mine at Hootertis, and a butcher I know personally. Get to know your butcher. Get to know your butcher, and as they say, definitely important. Yes.
Super important.
Susan, you have that Vaseline 1930s look
Liam,
again.
If it hadn't been a hectic week, there was going to be a new computer here already or a gizmo to attach on top. I did the phone because I unplugged the phone to put the microphone in, the earbuds. It died. So I clearly am a newbie at like juggling all the tech components. But
you came back like
I came back
instantly.
I'm not missing
really
a fun
impressed.
conversation with Leanne and Liam. No way, Jose. Hold on, let me try to do my little see if that does anything. Nothing, right? No,
that's better.
Yeah, I'm going to come over here. I think it's the glare of the light. There we go. Let's kill the light. There, how's that? Better? Somewhat?
Yes.
Somewhat.
Much
Yeah,
better.
so I actually, I got lucky. I was in a Waldorf-inspired homeschooling group when the kids were little. And that attracts a lot of crunchy granola, kind of healthy eating-minded moms. And they put me in touch with a farmer about an hour away out in Lancaster, Pennsylvania, which is Amish country. So we went out there and visited the farm. It was like great fun. And we still buy essentially from them, although Alvin joined a co-op. So now I'm getting from Alvin and his friends, but we still call it Alvin food. And qualitatively, so different. Eggs, whole different color of yolk because the chickens have eaten actual grass, and I believe it's beta carotene. Leanne can fact check me, or Liam, but a whole different vibrant color. Quality of meat is great. Quality of chicken is great. And the thing that I talked about before, so Liam, you've heard this. I get an Alvin raised chicken, throw the bones in the pot, and I make myself some soup. And it does the Jell-O thing. Watch it wiggle, see it jiggle. And when I get a grocery store chicken, even Whole Foods, that claims on the package that it is grass-fed and free range, I make the stock. It tastes like chicken broth, but it never does the wiggle and jiggle. So it would not meet my mother Louise Longstress criteria of being the gelatinous, wiggly Jell-O thing that she was so sure was healthy because they serve it in hospitals. So.
And
Liam, what do you do?
Leanne was right to call me out because I don't know this word, uterus. She says, Liam, you're butchering the word. She's like, yes, uterus Amish.
I don't know the word either. What does it mean? I think you're just going to have to make Leanne a host as well. We're going to.
I think so. She's filled with lots of great information. This was a broadcast, I thought.
Is this the brand of Amish that live in Canada, Leanne? And is that, I'm wondering if that's what it is. The real Amish has, yes, astaxanthin is it's an antioxidant, and it's found in salmon. It's what gives salmon its pink color, and it's protective for the eyes. Macular degeneration, my understanding is it's almost 100% preventable with good nutrition. So when people develop macular degeneration, sadly, it's after decades of eating food that just didn't have enough good stuff in it. I'm not so sure about other eye things like glaucoma and Liam, jump in if you know anything on the eye subject or astaxanthin.
I was just amazed at this broadcast because, clinicaltrials.gov, they have to put all of the study in its entirety. I didn't even know that they have, and that should be fined, and they're not being fined, and Robert RFK saying in Congress, so it's on the public record, glyphosate causes cancer. That's huge, man.
Already thousands, if not millions of dollars have been awarded to people who got cancer, and the judge or the jury determined that, yes, the glyphosate that you were exposed to was what gave you your cancer. So that's already been determined in a court of law, which I don't know which is higher, Congress or law, but, it's been determined. So non-negotiable. And again, Europe banning all these things that we still proudly allow and then resist even labeling products as having that particular ingredient in it. It's insanity. Total insanity.
And,
and the money also, the fines. There was something I was going to say about that. I need somebody to read my brain and tell me what it was. Money, fines,
speaking, go ahead.
FDA. Why are you allowed to sit on the FDA when you have enormous financial stakes in pharmaceutical companies? That to me is just a no-brainer, that before you go sit on the FDA, we're going to look deeply at your finances, and you're done. You can't be unless all your money, you can invest in other things. You can invest in, hydrogen powered cars or some other things, but not pharmaceutical products. And I don't understand why that is not, to me, any fourth grader could figure that out. I don't understand why we allow it. If anybody can explain it, Leanne, or anyone else, have at it, because I don't get it.
Leanne was talking about I'm going to
astaxanthin.
Butcher this word.
Right. I'm going to say it's ASTA. I'm going to butcher it too. And who knows? I can go on Amazon because
it's where she gets her meat. It's you saying it's good for the heart, many benefits, and cancer benefits as well. An amazing antioxidant. And like they were saying today, how if you can't patent it, it just doesn't exist for Big Pharma. So we're just basically ATM machines, human ATM machines for a corrupt, petrol-theistic nightmare. It's ridiculous.
But here's the thing: if all it was I would take that at this point. Instead, it gets attacked by pharma because the DMSO or the ivermectin or the lithium orotate instead of lithium carbonate is going to be a direct competitor to my product, because it's going to potentially do the same thing my product does with fewer side effects, while not costing nearly as much. And you're not going to have to get a prescription and pay your annoying copay and go deal with your doctor and then deal with the jam up at the pharmacy when they say your doctor didn't get the pre-auth. All you're going to have to do is go on Amazon, click, 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 and it's going to arrive at your house 18 hours later. How easy is that? So yeah.
And I could see in the comments of the Zoom call, people were like, what? They were like, this is new. I have heard about ivermectin and fenbendazole being, having efficacy when it comes to treating cancer. And Leanna's like, yeah, Liam. So thank you for the support, Leanne. I would like to maybe, Susan, talk about what you're up to. You've got these Substacks. We were talking about Substacks on the program.
Between Substacks because I have the crazy dysfunctional family memoir one, and I've got the alternative medicine health related one, and then I've got the one for kids, which is the Once Upon a Duck, which is trying to get them healthier, both physically and brain.
Once Upon a Duck, yeah.
Once Upon a Duck, and then Liam, number 4 is coming, thank you for putting that up there. And number 4 is coming, which is Mrs. Moroto's Guide to Raising Fine Young Ducklings. So I toggle back and forth between them. I was in Baltimore for the last 24 hours, which is where I grew up, trying to do a little research, get my mother's copious amounts of medical records. And there's the breast cryotherapy one. I was fascinated by that when my radiologist friend shared that got approval back in October. So it's less than a year old. Anybody who is dealing with breast cancer or someone, tell them that it exists. Because their doctor may not know about it. It may not be on their doctor's radar because it's only been approved since October of 2025. So it hasn't yet made it into tons of conferences and tons of journals. But according to my radiologist friend who is all about the boobies, she's been doing mammograms forever. She is herself a breast cancer survivor, but she says that I believe she said it shrinks tumors, kills the cancer cells, far less invasive because you're just, I don't know what exactly you're doing. I think you are injecting, I don't even want to try. What I will promise instead is to have her on at some point, and Liam and I can interview her. And she can tell you about it, but it's an alternative that you may not hear about if you don't mention it to your doctor or tell your sister, friend, whoever, that this new, supposedly very effective, fewer side effects treatment for breast cancer and kidney cancer exists. So.
And your website is Therapy with Susan, correct?
That is correct. That is me. So when I am not substacking, I'm in the office on Mondays and Thursdays seeing traditional therapy clients or clients who want EMDR, which is a great trauma technique, or clients who want to talk nutraceuticals for brain health. So I do that on some days of the week, and then other days of the week I am working on the other things. So tell us about you, Liam. Tell us about what a king of LinkedIn might do in his average day.
King of LinkedIn might do. Okay, here is sort of some shameless self-promotion. I don't know, it's just a minute or so long, but we could sort of see everything that I do kind of in a video. So let's see if I can play this real quick.
But then, Liam, you're going to have to explain it in English for people like me who are tech challenged and they have no idea what it is that you do.
All right. This is sort of a visual idea. Here we go. Oop, where's the sound, man? There it is. Here we go.
God is dead. God remains dead, and we have killed him.
I am telling you, I am the unofficial king of LinkedIn Live. As the beats pulsated through the streets, I embarked on a mission to bring house music to life in a way that had never been done before. I created the first ever continuous mix house music dance show.
How did we get here? Medical passports? Vampire capitalism? A zombie apocalypse? Or are we at the dawn of a new golden age?
At around 12:30, we're taking the TGV to Frisches.
One more again. Steady rolling.
1 minute later.
First, a history lesson.
My cafe allongé. Voila. This is my favorite thing about the TGV, is the barcode.
Monsieur, j'ai pas de passe Navigo, je l'ai oublié à la parade, je paye mon forfait tous les mois.
Liam Gallegos finds solace painting portraits, where shadows linger over the collapse of mighty towers, and where veils shroud the corridors of power, where the very nature of a woman remains undefined. Liam seeks to capture the essence of humanity.
Love will make us
Boom, 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 boom. Boom, boom, boom. Down there on the drum.
This is the classical artist painting method for executives.
That's what I do. See, we're at a trust apocalypse, and I basically use my storytelling abilities to, everybody's allergic to marketing. So it's within the storytelling that that the true relationships emerge, and if you can tell that story in a cinematic way, make it look and sound incredible, then you're already, you're hitting on all cylinders. So Leanne was saying, yes, check out Dr. Makis.
I don't know Dr. Makis. M-A-K-I-S?
MAKIS, his success. He's in the U.S. now, and he's got his license. He's got his license taken from him. Yeah,
right.
Man,
that means we need to pay attention to him because he is selling something, promoting something, or sharing information that is very threatening to the powers that be. Which means we should all take note. It's probably really good stuff. It meets the Corey scale.
He got his license taken for using ivermectin and anti-parasite drugs for women with 4-stage cancer. That's evil. That's just plain evil. With a 98% success rate.
Yeah, it's
so.
But again, like according to Pierre Corey, it's true. The more they attack, the more they go after an entity, a person, a doctor, the more it means they're threatened by it. And I will check it out, Leanne, without a doubt.
And you get you only get flack right when you're over the target. And so Leanne says my presentation was cool, and she wished she could do stuff like that because she's so techie challenged. Well, that's what Susan used to say. Susan used to say she's techie challenged, but her phone went out. She came back, boom. That was outstanding. Most people would have just ran away like, oh my God. But you had the link. You came back with the link. I was very impressed. That was really
Thank
great.
you. Thank you. But Liam, honestly, like for somebody who has watched your video and heard what you say, and they still say, yeah, it's a really cool video, but I don't know exactly what the dude does. What's the sentence or two that encapsulates it?
I bring your stories to life in a cinematic way. So
okay, so you are a producer. You are a
I'm a producer, marketing using AI, because a lot of that video you saw the AI creep in. Like, did you see Humphrey Bogart and Lauren Bacall in Le Trembleu, which is a
I
restaurant?
saw that,
at
and I
Gare de
also
Lyon?
saw you have Sadhguru in there. I don't know if I'm saying his name right, but he's another one, Liam, that I was so disappointed he was in the Epstein files too.
Sadhguru was in the Epstein files?
Apparently he was. I believe his offense, I mean, I can't believe we're even at this level of parsing degrees of badness, but apparently the young girls that were part of his worship situation, he had a thing that they needed to take their top off and then he was running his finger down their spine. And but apparently he had somebody who worked for him with him sent him an email and said, I think this might be making the girls uncomfortable. So he agreed to back off. But, you know, what was he? And I think he said something like his hand needed to touch their bare back for the transfer of energy, you know,
Do you know, on the White Album, they have a song called Sexy Sadie?
No. I mean,
Sexy Sadie, see what you've done. You've made a fool out of everyone.
Crown off, Liam. If you're going to sing, if we're at the entertainment portion, it's crown time.
You've made a fool out of everyone. Sexy Sadie, you're the greatest of them all. Sound familiar? No?
Ever so slightly. I think I've lost you. I think I'm looking. I think
you'll get yours yet.
Here we go. There we are. Yes. Okay, good. You've got your crown on. Excellent. So we're singing "Sexy Sadie," or what are we? Liam,
are you familiar with Sexy Sadie?
You'd have to carry me. I'm not sure I can quite do it.
But it was the Beatles went to see the Maharaja, right? And so they were there for this really spiritual experience, and he kept saying, "What are the pretty girls? And you guys are the Beatles. What are the pretty girls?" And so they were like.
But you know, so often you read about these religious cults, or not religious, but cults, and the lead guy has everybody thinking that if they sleep with him, all the women, he will transfer his sacred energy right into them. And the fact that some of them are 12 and some of them are, you know, that doesn't matter. And they line up for it. It's just, I've seen that story over and over and over.
Yeah,
reading through life stories.
Leanne says weirdos.
All weirdos. And this is why, okay, let's talk about this. So in the Mrs. Moroto's Guide to Raising Fine Young Ducklings, my very first post, which is almost ready for me to press the button on, is stop dressing the ducklings like they are prostitutes, because the goal in 15 years is to have them not be in the Epstein files or whatever the equivalent is in 15 years. And I really don't, I mean it. I'm not trying to be funny. Like, put kids in age-appropriate clothing, and if you are 4, that is not a halter top and a I don't know what.
Yeah, man, that really makes me want to puke. These
I mean, we're totally sexualizing the kids. Well, the girls in particular. I don't know the boys are as sexualized, but I'm very yellow, Susan. I know.
Yes.
I need.
But this is live TV. Susan had a technical
I can go back
breakdown, and then she. No, that's okay. That's okay. We've got we've been on for almost yellow. Say yellow. What's that song? I don't know what it is with the crown, but every put on the crown, I want to sing some. They call it mellow yellow. That's
got it.
right.
Yeah, mellow yellow.
They call it yellow.
Wasn't there a song also about a yellow school bus? Was that a Beatles song or a? Maybe I'm crossing.
Yellow submarine
Yeah, the yellow submarine. There we all live in the
yellow
yellow submarine.
Yellow
I'm
submarine.
not sure of the words.
Lives
You're gonna have to do the words. We all live
in a town where I was born. Lives a man, sails the
Sing it,
sea.
Leanne. Dee, dee, dee.
Yeah, this is like the it's getting the all of the musical. It's like an antenna for.
All right, so
for
Liam, two
musical.
songs for you. We need the Liam and Susan song for when we do this because you right that was coming.
Oh yeah, sure.
And then the kid song, the 10 teeny tiny tasty toes.
Yes, I was reading the
Whatever it
the
is.
document you sent
Yep.
me, the story you sent me, and I was
Right.
getting some ideas. Yeah.
Great, terrific. And then the other thing we need to do.
All right.
is
Well, it's been a.
But wait, let's plug
Go ahead.
Bob because we're gonna talk with him soon, right? Well, like probably within the next week, we
I'm
hope.
gonna call Bob and talk with him soon.
And
yes.
Bob, everybody is Bob Schwartz, and he is the maker of a fabulous documentary, which is quite sobering, but it's information that everybody should have about a very severe adverse drug effect that happened to him. That
Right, almost destroyed his life. Right.
well, and it was almost fatal because the general doctor who prescribed him the med prescribed it to him at a dose 3 times higher than what the manufacturer's label said was an appropriate starting dose. So then he, I don't want to tell the whole story, or people won't need to come in but it's so if you want to watch the documentary, it's risks.com, and it's risks is spelled RXISKS.com, and his documentary is 30 minutes right on there, very well done, worth 30 minutes of your time. And then talking,
and
the king and queen can sing.
All right, yeah.
All right, we're gonna shake it. Shake it to the left and shake it to the
Shake it to the right.
Oh my goodness,
Well,
we
this
need
has
to
been
get
a lot of
Leanne
fun.
in here somehow. Her comments are great, but I feel like she could sing and rock it with us.
I think so, right? Because the more's the merrier. Absolutely. So, Leanne, thanks for joining us
Yes, thank you,
for a
Leanne.
really informative and wonderful broadcast.
And she's right. The astaxanthin does protect you against sunburn. Apparently, protects you internally somehow. So you're less likely to get sunburned if you've been taking it consistently.
Yes. All right. So,
All right.
it was outstanding, and we'll see you everybody next
week.
Next week.
Wednesday, 4 p.m.
Right.
Eastern Standard, every week with the King and the Queen.
With the King and the Queen and
Leanne and the Canadian. And we need to
and
tell
the
you
Canadian. The King, the Queen, and the Canadian. That sounds like Sex, Lies, and Videotape or something. The King.
In Canada, they have Royal Mounted Police. For real. Do you know this,
Yes,
William?
they do.
Yeah, Royal Mounted Police.
Dudley Do-Right. Dudley Do-Right.
I don't know Dudley Do-Right.
You don't know the cartoon Dudley Do-Right?
Nope.
No.
You'll have to fill me in.
But yes, the mounted.
All right,
police.
everybody.
All right.
Liam, thank
Thanks
you,
a lot.
Liam. Thank
See you next time.
Everybody else, thank you. Bye.
Bye bye.